Thanks, everyone, for inviting me today. So I'm Jake Gagnon. I'm an associate director at Biogen. And today I'll be talking about modeling regulatory intelligence with generative AI. So this is a team effort in the Text Mining Center of Excellence at Biogen with my colleagues, Hong Yu, Yuka, James, and Matthew. Our agenda for today, I'm going to talk about the project context and the goal of this project, then our proposed AI approach, and then some discussion and some next steps. So what was Biogen hoping to accomplish here? So often as a pharmaceutical company, we have to follow many regulatory guidelines, such as the FDA and EMA guidelines. These regulations change over time, they're evolving. So then we have to keep track of each regulatory update and how that impacts our internal documentation, such as our SOPs and other internal documents. So we have to monitor these changes to the regulation and implement these regulatory changes. And then how do we then modify our internal documentation? So here we have a diagram here, some incoming regulatory changes. The subject matter experts then look at these regulatory changes and see how will it impact our internal SOPs. So unfortunately, this is a very manual process and very labor intensive, and we might potentially miss some SOPs. So we wanted a better approach. So we wanted to hopefully use AI technology to streamline how we can handle regulatory updates. We are getting these updates from our vendor, and we want to compare these regulatory changes to our internal documents in a more streamlined fashion. Hopefully, the large language model or AI system will help us pinpoint which documents, which SOPs might be affected, and how we might want to change those to be compliant with these updates. And then also, is there any discrepancies or omissions within our internal documentation to make sure we have a proper regulatory compliance? In terms of gathering regulatory updates, we're just gathering this from our vendor. We're not gathering these updates ourselves. And we do have access to this vendor, which provides us these updates on a regular basis. And then upon receipt of these updates, then the AI model will be activated and tell us potentially which SOPs or job aids are impacted. So just here, we want to go into a little bit more detail of our current process without generative AI. So these new regulatory changes are received from the vendor. Some human SMEs review the regulatory changes. Then we try to review some existing SOPs and existing processes to see if the regulatory changes have an impact on these processes. Then we have to conduct some impact assessments to see the impact of the regulatory changes. Then a human or a team of humans determines if the SOPs are impacted and how it needs to be updated. Then we need to update the SOPs. And then finally, we need some approval process to make sure to finally make these updates. So this process is very manual, and it may take days or weeks. The quality of this process can vary based on the different individuals or SMEs' subjectivity. So now with our new AI system, we hope to streamline this process, make it a little less manually intense. So here we're still receiving the regulatory changes from the vendor. Now we're performing a semantic search based on comparing the new incoming regulatory changes with our document store of all our SOPs. So those SOPs are stored, for example, in a vector store or document store, where we're comparing the incoming regulatory changes to our pre-existing SOPs and job aids. Then once we get a list of potentially impacted SOPs, then we're running it through a React agent to do a second round of comparing the small list of impacted SOPs with the regulatory changes to see which ones are potentially impacted with the new regulations. And the React agent also provides some potential reasoning of why it believes it's impacted. Is there any missing parts of our SOPs that need to be modified based on the regulatory change, or is any conflict of the conflicting parts within the SOP with the regulatory changes or with each other? And then the React agent also proposes some recommended changes to the language. And then we always recommend a human in the loop for these AI agents. So we have a human review the potential updates, and then finally we can accept or reject the React agent's suggestions. So this process is a lot more automatic than the manual process. So it's doing our impact assessment automatically. And the SME process is now transferred to more of a reviewer or supervisor of this process. So, and we're hoping that this process will be more efficient and more scalable than our previous process. Just to look at this case study in more detail, we had some EMA new guidelines come in. They had a new guideline about management of ongoing clinical trials impacted by political conflicts, disasters, or major disruptions. And here we just have some example text from that new guideline. And the step one, as we mentioned, we're going to do a semantic search. So the regulatory change comes in, the specific regulatory change. We'll then use some embedding model to convert the regulatory change into an embedding vector. Then we also take our pre-existing SOPs and chunk them up into smaller parts and convert each chunk into an embedding. And then through cosine similarity, we compare the semantic similarity between the regulatory change and each of the chunks for each of the SOPs. And then we can identify potentially which chunks and which SOPs are potentially impacted. And then as a second round, we now then use our React agent to do a more thorough comparison of the small list of impacted SOPs. So we compare the EMA guideline with the list resulting from step one, and then to create a smaller list of potentially impacted SOPs or job aids. And then it also provides some reasoning of potential language changes. Okay, so we're hoping that this process will give us some efficiency gains, so reduce the manual labor time and FTE resources compared to the current process. We're also hoping to have compliance assurance, which we mean that we want more consistency in the impact assessment. So before there was some human subjectivity in the impact assessment. And then adaptivity, also this process is adaptable. So we can apply to other types of documents, and then it can adapt to any incoming new regulatory changes. And then we're hoping to be at the forefront of AI as applied to regulatory compliance. And we, as I mentioned before, we always recommend the human in the loop to double check the factual accuracy and recommended changes of the AI model. Now, we still are having some challenges with our proposed process, so we want to make sure we're controlling the false negatives and false positive rates after the semantic search. And we don't want to miss any potentially impacted SOPs, and we don't want too many false alarms. So we're still in the process of validating and assessing the accuracy of this approach. So we do have some validation set, but we're collecting additional validation data. And we're in our proof of concept stage now that we're still in the process of validating the accuracy of this two-step proposed approach. So we are working closely with our SMEs to collect more data and continuing to gather their feedback and collect information on the accuracy of this approach. And we are hoping, based on the choice of our LLM, we're hoping to reduce the time of manual labor, improve the efficiency of our process, and then by comparing different LLMs, we'll study the cost of different LLM approaches. So that's all I wanted to mention today. So this is an ongoing project at Biogen, and we're still in our proof of concept phase and the ongoing effort for validation and accuracy assessment of this approach. Is there any questions? So for the proof of concept, we're focusing on the regulatory documentation.
All right, Jake, thank you so much. Great talk. I think we do have a couple questions in the chat box. Can you see those, Jake, or you want me to read them out?
Yeah, I can see them. Okay. So I have a question about LLM confidence. So we're not releasing the LLM confidence to the users, but we are gathering feedback from the users if they agree with LLMs. We're sponsored now through a Streamlit app. So we're in the process of developing Streamlit app and gathering feedback from the SMEs.
I may have joined a little bit late, but there was one on the specific departments. Did you get that one?
Yeah, we've been the biostats is collaborating with the regulatory departments, and we're focusing on the regulatory documentation.
All right.
Okay, thanks for having me today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. This is fantastic. A common question is if you're going to share the slides. Did you tackle that at the beginning?
I believe we can share the slides.
Okay, perfect. Do you think you'll post them online, or should people just reach out to you directly, or what's the best way for that?
They can email me.
Okay, perfect. If you have any questions on the slides, feel free to reach out to Jake or reach out to us at RN Pharma. We can also try to help. And I think with that, we're going to go ahead and end this talk, and we are going to transition over to leveraging ChatGPT and statistical programming in the pharmaceutical industry by Ian at Eli Lilly. So we will see you over in the next talk.
Yep,
Thanks again, Jake. Yep, see you later.